Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson. Crosswalks, street crossings, audio pedestrian signals. It's always been a little bit of a challenge for mobility out there for the blind and visually impaired. Well, there's a company that's been working on this. AYES, A-Y-E-S, improving mobility for visually impaired people. Explore the world around you step by step. That comes from their website. And here's a little bit more about the company. AYES helps visually impaired people navigate safely, and their mobile application, OKO, that's OKO, is able to recognize the pedestrian signal light by using the smartphone camera. And the algorithm is able to inform the user of the state of the traffic signal light. And this information is conveyed by using audio and haptic feedback. In the future, the AYES team says that the OKO app will be able to do much more, like object recognition and incorporating GPS navigation. I myself never thought about an APS being in your pocket, in your hand, but this team of AI, artificial intelligence engineers coming together to help develop a product, an app, the OKO app, that'll help bring their vision of an intersection to us, the visually impaired and blind community. I have to admit, it's kind of exciting. And if you want to find out more about the OKO campaign and AYES, you can check out the links in the show notes or go to ayes.ai on the web. And now, here's the team from AYES. Hope you enjoy. Mobility and street crossing has to be one of the biggest challenges, and if you could just imagine having an APS, an audio pedestrian signal, in your pocket, well, there's a first. The people behind AYES, that's AYES, has come up with an app and working and developing an app that will absolutely do just that. Be an APS in your pocket at intersections. The team is comprised of AI engineers, and they're here in the studio today. And leading out for the AYES team is Willem van die Midderup. Willem, thank you and your team for what you're doing, and thanks for taking the time to come on to Blind Abilities and share with us all. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having us. Yeah, so I'm Willem van die Midderup. I have with me Vincent Janssen and Michiel Janssen, who are actually brothers, and all three of us started AYES together.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone.
What gave you the idea? Where was the spark that started this idea to have an APS in your hand?
Yeah, sure. Vincent and I are brothers, and we have a mutual family friend called Bram, and he's severely visually impaired. And during COVID times, it's like 1 year or 1 year and a half ago, he mentioned he would like to go out and about just for a random walk into the parks or to a random place. And then as three AI engineers, we started thinking, can we leverage artificial intelligence to assist blind and visually impaired in assisting them to be more independent? So that's indeed the reason why we started. And now, 5 months later into the journey, we're quite far developed, but there's still a lot to do, of course.
I'm glad you ran into a friend that is visually impaired, because this is a great initiative. This is really something because, like I said in the beginning, pedestrian crossings or crossings alone is a big deterrent for people to get out and about, because that holds a big challenge to them. How will this app actually work at an intersection?
Yeah, good question. Currently, we're live in the Benelux, and we use an AI algorithm that is trained on over 92,000 images. And once it's above a certain threshold that the light is actually red or green, then we bring that information back to the user using audio and haptic feedback. How does the user use it? When he comes at an intersection, he simply takes out the phone, points the camera in the direction that he wants to go in. And if the traffic light is inside of the camera, or the camera can perceive the traffic light, then we will bring that information back using the audio and haptic feedback. It is a bit getting used to trying to point the camera in the right direction, but we have received feedback from users that once you get the hang of it, it's very handy to use. Once we retrain the AI on certain data, for example, for the US, then we can expand to those regions. But currently we're live in the Benelux.
Oh, that's really interesting. My first question is from the US here. When do you perceive that happening at some point?
Yeah, we received a lot of feedback that indeed it would be very helpful in the US, that apparently not a lot of intersections are equipped with those APS systems. And we are planning on doing some pilot projects in the US, but that will be consistent upon having enough data and really having enough testers. So people can go to our site and become one of the first testers of the ICE application for the US. They can simply go to the Get Early Access button to be one of the first testers. But we are also working with CNIB in Canada to try a pilot project, because the traffic light is so different in the US that we will really need to retrain the AI model and have a good solid base to start testing. And then once that is finalized, we can start expanding.
Well, that sounds great. And they would go to ayes.ai.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's really interesting because you have to travel from Belgium to the Netherlands, Canada, US to experience all this stuff. And it'd really be neat if I end up in Belgium that I could pull it up there.
Exactly. The goal is that the app will work at, of course, every country. And actually the whole community around blind and visually impaired can help with expanding to different countries by downloading the OKO Campaign app, where a lot of people can capture data and then share it to our cloud instance, where it's only used internally to make our AI much smarter and to make sure that it works at every country. Very important to know is that this is just the first step for ICE. We are planning on adding a lot more features because we have the added benefit that the camera is perceiving the environment. So once we create enough solid AI algorithms to detect, for example, the crosswalk, the sidewalk, obstacles on your way, for example, the ride-sharing steps, they can be left on the sidewalk, or even bicycles, or even road work. We all are planning to incorporate that all in the OKO app to really help blind and visually impaired with more audio cues to really safely navigate them from A to B.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, when I first heard about this, it was like interesting. I never thought of putting the APS right in the pocket because it's probably pretty expensive for some towns, locations to actually install these in the infrastructure. They'd have to harness it pre-putting them in, and that takes a lot of time and everything. So if someone could have this, that's ingenious. I think this is really a good idea.
We already had one call with the city of New York, and there we encountered that only 7% of the whole city has an APS system. And moreover, New York City has also a quota to install 150 APS systems each year, but that costs them around 10 million each year, which is an enormous number that probably only New York can spend, but smaller cities can't. Hence the reason why we want to be also more an affordable way, but also way more scalable in making a city accessible overnight.
And we're talking to cities saying, hey, we can help out making your city more accessible. We're definitely not trying to be an or story. So that means that we want the installation of the physical infrastructure, but we also want to help out by creating the software to make the city accessible overnight. And we're talking to cities saying, hey, we can do this and you can help by giving us users and paying for the users, and thus making the cost for the user as low as possible. And as well, we're talking to insurance companies saying, okay, we can help out with accessibility, seeing if they can help out by paying for the service instead of the users.
Yeah, it's really interesting how you make this into a model that will work. You know, every city is going to be different on how they approach it. And you're absolutely right. Minneapolis puts some in, but there's only a few of them compared to the entire grid system. And this, you take this right with you. As a user of this, you go to the intersection, you basically pull out your camera, and using the camera, you're going to see the signal and it's going to interpret it for you with haptic or audio. Do you foresee, like, if I always hear about Facebook glasses or, you know, other companies coming out with glasses, but I believe they intend on those being able to access apps at some point. Do you foresee that a little bit?
Yeah, so at this stage, we are a smartphone application and we are working towards a hands-free solution as well, so that we can use a smartphone in, for example, a chest strap. Yeah, don't need to take out the phone at every intersection, but it's clicked in before the start of the route. And we are also looking towards, the smart glasses, see if we can partner up with, for example, Facebook, maybe the Google glasses, but we need to figure out how we can adapt our software such that it works on those glasses, or how we can make the combination work. And then we can let the end user decide whether or not they want to have a smart glass with them or not. But we're focusing on making the software better, and then we can see which collaborations we can provide with smart glass manufacturers.
Exactly, because in a sense, every user is different as well. Some might prefer a chest strap, some might prefer the application, or someone might prefer a Google Glass. And that's why we're coming at it as a software point of view. We create the software first, and then we can see where we can expand the software into.
I think another aspect of this is it's going to give people a little bit more information when they're at an intersection, whether they use it to cross, or just like when you go to a restaurant, you might pull up a menu before you get there. You could actually pull up these intersections that you get to and actually experience it a little bit, so you got a little bit of idea, like, is it a 4-way crossing, is it a 3-way, are there turn lanes? So I'm sure this can keep growing. Will it keep growing and get smarter as you go?
Yeah, exactly.
That's indeed the intention, yeah. So it's also quite funny mentioning the smart glasses. We also quite lucky that we already tried out the smart Facebook stories, or the Ray-Ban stories. Here in Belgium, there's a reseller that captured one from the US because it's not for sale in Europe yet. But we already tried it out. The footage is quite amazing, but the only challenge is that you need to stream the footage or the video stream to your phone. And our phones then process the frames, puts the eye to work, and then it needs to run at a certain frame rate to really experience a good user experience. So that's the only challenge that we need to face while thinking or looking for an alternative.
Yeah, but we were quite impressed by the Ray-Ban stories.
Yeah, for sure.
But maybe to answer the question, will it get smarter? It will definitely, because at its core, it's an AI algorithm. So it's based on machine learning. It uses computer vision. It gets smarter over time. It's kind of like the Tesla that's driving around and learning as it goes. We're a bit different. We need to be solid as we start out. So we need to have a very decent algorithm that needs to be very safe, of course. We're not releasing the beta software full out. But indeed, it will get smarter over time, and more features will be added to really assist more in outdoor navigation.
Yeah, as for the video streaming, I don't see that it would need to, for someone that's visually impaired, actually need an entire video. It would just need to know, I imagine, if it's looking at the light signal, don't walk situation, that information, once it turns to walk, you got 30 seconds or so of that type of nature. I think that people will want that information, but they'll still have to use their senses to hear the traffic, and that this will augment the situation, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The only thing is that once you have a really live feed, so if it's processing at enough speed, then it's easy to know if you're pointing in the right direction. So even when you're wearing a smart glass, you of course need to perceive the traffic light. And once it's at a decent frame rate, so that means if the software is running fast enough and if the feed is fast enough, then it can really be an instant way of orienting yourself. I need to go in that direction instead of that direction. And when there's a lag, then it can be more difficult to pinpoint where exactly that you need to go to. So that's also why the application now is very fast. In the Benelux, we actually received a few testimonials from our users that they used the application to determine what direction they were going to, because they got distracted by sound of traffic, as of course happens. And another user actually used the application to find the crosswalk, even though that the crosswalk feature is not yet incorporated, just by trying to find where the traffic light is located using the application. So that's really why the speed is very important.
Yeah, that makes really good sense. I got to go back to when I first learned mobility, is lining yourself up. The button may be back here, then you have to step forward, and sometimes those entries are at a diagonal. So if you can hear or get a haptic thing, or however the information's conveyed to the person that you're lined up, that's 90% of the battle right there.
Indeed, the speed is very important. For example, if you're nearing an intersection and the traffic light is green and it turns red when you're there, then you really need to have like the split-second decision, and then you can't just process a couple of frames in 1 second. You really need to have that speed to determine switching between states. So yeah, that's really important for our company and for the app.
When we're taught here in the United States about intersections, if you're unfamiliar with it, is to wait a cycle, to really acclimate yourself with what's really happening. I'm not sure if I think there will ever be a device that will actually walk you right across the street, because, there are cars and they're unpredictable, and, things can happen even to sighted people. They do happen to sighted people as well. But like you guys said, the information you're going to get there might help build the confidence, so you'll apply the skills you learned. And with this information, it'll help you assure that you lined yourself up. I like this. This is really good.
The word that you use, augmenting your walks, is really a correct way of describing it. We're just trying to bring back more information to help people safely cross the street. And of course, they still need to rely on everything that they're taught and all of their other senses. But maybe our app can be of help.
Especially for teachers, too. They can assure them, they're getting more information, and, all this information can go back to you guys so you guys can keep on learning and improving upon it. I really like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We noticed that here in Belgium, at least, since we launched most specifically in Belgium and the Netherlands, that most of mobility trainers are already adopting to our application as well, and that they teach blind and visually impaired also to use our application. So that's really nice to see.
As well in a school, right? In a school as well, they were very enthusiastic about the application and what it can be for outdoor navigation.
Seems like working with you guys, they're going to build it to what they want. That must have been something for you guys to just take this idea and run with it. I'm really glad you did it. Not too many people will take that challenge. Just thank you for doing all that.
Yeah, and it was, of course, quite risky quitting our jobs and starting the journey, but it has been very fun. And of course, it's very rewarding when you see. So we launched actually last week in the Benelux. Our user base is growing quite rapidly, and it's very nice to receive the positive feedback from all of the users saying, this is a very useful application. Thank you very much. I mean, that really gives us more energy to keep pushing and keep adding more features.
Yeah.
How can more people get involved?
So they can, of course, go to the website, AYES, so AYES.ai, and they can get early access. That way we can note down their contact information and we can make them one of the first testers once we go live in the US or in even other countries. Everyone can be one of the early adapters. But there's also, as I mentioned, the OKO campaign app that is live throughout the whole world, only on iPhone, where people can capture data, send it to us, and then we use that only internally to create and to make even more powerful AI models. And that way we can expand much more easily into different regions.
That's great. I'll put the links in the show notes, and that's OKO App.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
It's Croatia for I.
Yeah. And one of the technical aspects that we really focused on is that it's very easy for Siri to open the app when you say, hey Siri, open OKO, because it's so easy to pronounce that it can quickly open the application, which of course is very interesting and important.
Yeah, some people don't think about that, and then all of a sudden they try and have the smart device open something up and it doesn't work too well.
Indeed.
Yeah. Pete Lane, my co-host on some of these shows, signed up and he got the email and he sent it to me, but he couldn't make it. He's not feeling well today, but he wanted to be here, so he's excited about this as well.
We're very excited to expand into different regions. Really, as I mentioned, the positive feedback, it's such an energy drive to keep expanding and to really make sure that everyone can use the application.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for coming on The Blind Abilities and sharing the story and doing what you're doing for the blindness community.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
When we share
what we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap between
the limited expectations
and the
reality of blind abilities.
The realities of blind
abilities.
For more podcasts with a blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities. Download our app from the App Store, Blindabilities, that's 2 words, or send us an email at info@blindabilities.com. Thanks for listening.